So the 2023 Paris Airshow just wrapped up. For the first time in 4 long years, the aviation world has descended onto Le Bourget, this mecca of aviation. Boeing, Airbus, Embraer, and others made sure to pull out all the stops, showcasing their latest and greatest innovations, and also selling an absolute boatload of new planes. I've been here covering it all, and in the next few days, I'm going to bring you some exclusive interviews with Boeing and Airbus leadership, in addition to a sneak peek of what's inside the 777X. But before I do any of that, I have to uphold what's become a bit of a tradition. I have to tell you who walked out of this show a winner and who walked out a loser. So, who are the winners and losers of this year's Paris Airshow? Let me explain. Before hopping into it, some of you might know I've been dabbling in aviation photography. I'm not gonna lie, I think I've taken some pretty awesome pictures so far, but I haven't been able to do anything with them except for to post them on Instagram. But then I had an idea. I haven't updated my merch store in a while, so what if I turned these pictures into posters? And that's exactly what I've done. I've teamed up with Displate to make my aviation photography available for everyone to enjoy. Now, there's a reason I chose to work with Displate on this project. Simply put, they make some of the best posters out there. They're made of sturdy metal, which not only improves the quality of the print, but it also makes it super easy to mount. They attach to the wall by magnet, meaning you don't have to drill any holes and can easily swap out posters whenever you want. If you visit my Displate storefront, you'll see a few of my best aviation pictures. And while you're there, make sure to check out some of Displate's other collections. They've partnered with brands like NASA, Star Wars, and a number of sports teams, so they have posters to match pretty much any interest. Right now, if you go to displate.com/KobeExplains and use the code KobeExplains at checkout, you'll get 20% off your order of 1 to 2 posters. And if you buy 3 or more, you'll get 30% off. So be sure to check it out. Doing so really helps to support my channel. Kicking things off, our first winner of the show is the A320neo. The A320neo has long been a success story, having sold over 8,000 units to date. But at last year's Farnborough Airshow, it was outshone by the rival 737 MAX. The MAX racked up over 217 orders and commitments, which was 3 times as many as the Neo. And just a few months later, United placed an order for an additional 100 MAXes. And all of a sudden, it seemed like the MAX was gaining some serious ground on the Neo. Well, Airbus completely wiped out those gains in the very first day of this year's show. It struck a historic deal with Indigo for 500 A320 family jets, all of which are firm orders. This marks the single biggest aircraft order by volume in history, and it reaffirms the Neo's place as the leader in its segment. Sticking with planes named Neo, the A330neo also came out a winner. Now, let me ask you an honest question. If I asked you before the show started what widebody would land the biggest order, what would you have said? Well, I think most people probably would have said the 787 or A350. But no, it was the humble A330neo that took home that honor, securing an MOU for 20 units from Avalon Leasing. The A330neo has been a bit of a slow seller so far, but I recently published a video that predicted that sales would soon pick up, and it appears that that prediction might be coming true, so maybe this is a win for me too. The third winner of the show is also related to Airbus, but it's not an Airbus plane. Rather, winner number 3 is Airbus's relationship with Qatar. Just a few months ago, Qatar and Airbus were sworn enemies, and it all stemmed from issues with the A350. Several of Qatar's A350s were experiencing premature paint peeling, which resulted in their grounding. Of course, Qatar wanted Airbus to take responsibility, but Airbus deflected any blame. Legal battles ensued, orders were canceled, and the relationship completely fell apart. It actually got so bad that I made a video speculating whether Qatar might become an all-Boeing airline. Well, things have taken a complete 180. Not only have the two settled their differences out of court, but their relationship seems stronger than ever. Qatar actually partnered with Airbus to showcase one of its A350-1000s at the show, demonstrating their renewed confidence in both the type and in Airbus. It seems the two sides have completely made up and are ready to get back to doing business. Alright, that's enough Airbus. Let's talk about an engine maker. Arguably the biggest underdog of the week, Pratt & Whitney came out a surprise winner. I say surprise because Pratt & Whitney has had a tough 2023. Over the course of the year, the reliability of its flagship PW1000 has been called into question. Most alarmingly, it's experienced several in-flight shutdowns, which has led to planes being grounded and obviously lots of costs being incurred. But despite these headwinds, Pratt got some really good news on the first day of the show. United Airlines announced that it would select the PW1000 family to power its future A321 fleet, of which they have 120 on order. This came as a bit of a surprise, not only because of the PW1000's issues, but also because United has over 100 737 MAXs on order, which are all powered by the competing CFM LEAP engine. United could have easily just stuck with that power plant with its A321s and retained part commonality, but they didn't, which is a major coup for Pratt & Whitney and its beleaguered engine. Wrapping up the winners of the week, we have Embraer. Now, I don't know about you, but every time a big airshow comes around, it seems like Embraer gets overlooked, at least on the commercial side of its business. But just like at last year's Farnborough Airshow, Embraer had a low-key but solid showing. They secured commitments for 6 E2s from Binter, 7 E1s for Envoy Air, and 20 converted freighters for Lanzhou Aviation. And this flurry of activity comes on the heels of a recent E2 commitment from Scoot. Now, is this the best airshow performance that we've ever seen? No, it's far from it. But it must feel really good for Embraer to secure meaningful commercial business on such a big stage, especially when it sometimes struggles to do so. Let's hope that they continue to build off this momentum because more competition is always good. Now, picking an airshow's winners is always fairly easy. What's harder, and in my opinion more interesting, is picking who lost. So, without further ado, let's turn our attention to the losers. Loser number 1. The Gulf carriers, specifically Qatar and Emirates. Neither Qatar nor Emirates made moves at this year's show, so why am I characterizing them as losers? Well, while they stood pat, their competition was making waves. On one hand, you had Riyadh Air, a Saudi-funded airline with deep pockets and major ambitions. They made a major splash at the show, convincing Boeing to paint a 787 that wasn't even theirs in their livery and display it front and center at the show. Second, Indigo placed that gigantic order for A320neos, which will enable their aggressive expansion goals. It's abundantly clear that competition in both the Mideast and India is quickly increasing, and for many years, Qatar and Emirates have dominated these regions without having to face real competitive pressure. Before long, these carriers will experience new competition in ways that they frankly have never seen. I'm going to be covering this topic in detail in a future video, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. The second loser of the show is the 777X. Now, don't get me wrong, the 777X is an incredibly impressive machine. I actually spent a fair bit of time up close and personal with both it and its new cabin mock-up during the show, and the innovations that Boeing has brought about are very real and very cool. That said, we can't ignore the fact that it didn't secure a single order during the week, and it holds the unfortunate distinction of being the only plane out of Boeing and Airbus's commercial stack that didn't secure a deal. This comes as a bit of a surprise. We've all seen the headlines. Airlines are in a capacity crunch and are turning to bigger and bigger jets like the A380 to fill the void. Given these market conditions, and given its place as the biggest plane on the market, the 777X seems like it should feast, and yet, no deals came to pass. Now, I have two hypotheses for what might be happening. One, airlines might not be confident in the maturity of the 777X design, and they want to wait and see how the flight test campaign evolves. Two, airlines might view today's market conditions as transient, and that the capacity-demand mismatch will eventually stabilize. But no matter what the reason, the result was still a goose egg. Now, all that being said, the 777X has a golden opportunity to redeem itself. There are rumors that Air France-KLM is gearing up to place a massive order for either the 777X or the A350. If Boeing can win that order, the 777X will find itself back in the winners column very soon. Now, if you're a Boeing fan and you're mad that I've given Airbus a bunch of wins and Boeing a big loss, don't click off the video just yet. You're gonna want to hear what I have to say next. Because the final loser of the 2023 Paris Airshow is the A350. During the show, Philippine Airlines ordered 9 A350-1000s. That should be a win, right? Well, during the announcement, I made a point to ask Philippine leadership whether this A350 would feature a high-density 10-abreast economy setup, and sure enough, it will, making Philippines the first mainline carrier to adopt a 10-abreast A350. Now, I think we all knew that this was eventually coming. In my recent 10-abreast A350 video, I predicted that some mainliners would adopt the setup, and honestly, the configuration makes sense for Philippines. For one, they have to compete with Cebu Pacific, who already flies high-density wide-bodies. In addition, the average Filipino stands only 5 feet 4 inches tall, making the Philippines one of the shortest countries on Earth. So, most of its residents probably won't take much issue with this slight reduction in space. But even so, the A350 remains a loser because of how Philippines will deploy them. They'll operate between Manila and New York, a flight with a duration of up to 17 hours. Now, I actually flew a 10-abreast A350 to the Paris Airshow, and while that plane didn't have the new production standard that has slightly wider seats, the setup was totally fine for my 7-hour journey. But 17 hours? I don't know if I'm about that. Again, I don't necessarily think that a 10-abreast A350 is a bad thing. I still stand by what I said in my 10-abreast analysis. The configuration can make flying more affordable and open up travel to way more people. But if other mainliners look at what Philippines is doing and deploy 10-abreast on these grueling, ultra-long missions, it could cause the A380 to lose its status as a fan favorite. So, that's about it. Those are the winners and losers of this year's Paris Airshow. Before signing off, I have to give a huge thank you to you specifically. It is your viewership that allows me to come to incredible events like this and bring you exclusive behind-the-scenes content from the aviation world. So, leave a like, leave a comment, and subscribe. It's what allows me to do what I do and bring it all back to you. Stay tuned for more great Paris Airshow content in the coming days, and until I see you again, don't forget to look up.